Welcome to Grisora Live, where we're helping small business owners move from being crushed by their business to having a business that propels them towards their life of their dreams. And this is a momentous occasion because we have reached episode, I believe this is 20. And I just did a search asking the almighty Google AI and said how many podcasts make it to 20 episodes. It says only about 10% of podcasts will make it past episode 20. So it says if a podcast reaches 20 episodes, it's considered to be in the top 1% to 10% of active long-term shows. How insane is that?
Wow. Yeah, and I've heard that before. And when I saw that it was number 20 on the link to join, it was like, wow, we haven't been doing this that long. Like I'm still not comfortable doing this.
It's crazy though how fast it actually went. And to me, what was most crazy is this started because you just mentioned casually, hey, we should do more live video. And then boom, the next day we're up and going. Had we not taken that step of just taking action, we may not have even started yet.
Yeah, well, it's that ready or not, we're doing it anyway. Like
Yep.
if you wait until you're ready, then you almost never start.
Yeah, I think there's a whole book dedicated to that for small business owners called Ready, Fire, Aim. And it's that idea that you gotta shoot and then see where it lands, and then you shoot again after you've aimed. But you can't wait to get everything aligned perfectly to take that first step or it'll never happen.
Well, and if we want to take that analogy further, it's like when you're actually sighting in a rifle. Like you don't actually know where that scope is pointed the first time you shoot. You just have to in the aim it in the general direction of the target and see where it lands, and then you adjust from there. I mean, that is like the idea that you can get it right, perfectly right the first time. I don't think anybody expects that.
Yeah, same principle in all aspects of life. I know when you're shooting a gun too, the scope may be all in, but you can't figure out how you're going to do until you take that shot. Then you have to readjust yourself and realign yourself and make those incremental improvements by seeing what happened when you did take that first shot.
Yeah, well, and that's, I mean, there's all the different levels to it, and so which actually ties in really well to the topic for the day, which is talking about you,
Oh,
and
for them.
meaning them, us, everyone.
Ah,
In small business, there's a time where we all feel stuck. And again, we hear all these different things about how do we get unstuck? Like, what do you need in your business? And oftentimes it's overcomplicated. I mean, complexity kills far more businesses than competitors ever do.
mm,
And so when we look at things, we we've got to be able to understand how we can go from where we are to where we want to get to. I mean, and fundamentally, the reason why so many companies fail to break through that $10 million threshold, and many not even don't even get that far, is because the business owner is the bottleneck, and they remain the bottleneck. And so, in order for a company to move beyond, and a lot of people think like, well, this business can only grow to say 3 million, 4 million, 5 million. Well, I'm going to say if you're doing, I mean, even if you're doing a quarter million or 300,000, you've dollars in revenue, you've already proven that there's a number of people who are willing to pay for your service, like that they find value in what you provide. And if there's $300,000 worth of revenue out there, there's probably 3 million. And if there's 3 million, there's probably 300 million. You just haven't learned how to grab it yet. And
yeah,
so,
completely.
you know,
I think going along with that, we get the blinders on and we'll tell ourselves those false beliefs. But then if we take a step back, in your particular example you're giving, what's the biggest company that does what you do? And as soon as you look at that and you're like, oh wow, they're doing 50 million a year, or they're doing 100 million, or they're doing half, whatever that number is, That's the biggest number that one of the other people providing that service has figured out how to grow to that number, which means if they've figured it out, the path has already been blazed up to that number, which means anyone else could probably do that as well. And it doesn't mean that it's a limit there. It just means no one else has figured out how to go past that number yet.
Right. And I think a lot of business owners fail to see that because they fall in love with their solution or the way that they particularly do things instead of focusing on it. What is it that a company does? They solve pain.
Mhm.
I mean, and the best companies provide painkillers to their customers, not vitamins. And so when you look at it, like how, maybe they don't, you look at this larger company and they don't do it the way that you think it should be done, but they've obviously figured out how to solve a particular customer's pain that's the same pain that you solve, and the way that they do it is what's allowed them to get to where they're at. And and in order to get past that $10 million mark, the owner cannot be in the way.
Right.
And even to break through lower thresholds, the owner has to learn how to get out of the way. But if in so many small businesses, if the owner is pulled out, well, then there is no business. And
I
so
was just talking to
how does the owner
someone.
climb that ladder or walk those steps to get out of the way?
Yeah, I was just talking to someone about this at an event I was at, and she's been doing bookkeeping for years, very skilled as a bookkeeper. And she said, I've been freelance bookkeeping for I don't even remember how many years, but it was a long, long time. And she said, it wasn't until recently I decided I wanted to make a real business out of it. And her comment was, wow, it's hard. I just like doing bookkeeping, but now I've got to learn all these other skills. I've got to learn how to communicate with others. I've got to figure out how to have a team. I've got to figure out how do I get more people to buy what I'm doing. I've got to go out and network. I've got to figure out how to close sales. And she just all these different things that she didn't know how to do because she's never been in that position before. But the cool thing is she took that first step and now she's slowly moving towards that new journey of moving from I'm wearing all the hats and doing it myself to she's figuring out how do I build a system? How do I build a team? How do I build that different structure that allows a real business to grow and flourish?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I want to talk about in a way that you can actually take something and use it. And so to get to the real fundamentals, a business needs three things. They've got to be able to make commitments. They've got to be able to keep those commitments. We call that marketing and sales, and then operations, fulfillment, delivery, all of that. And then they've got to keep track of what's going on,
Hmm.
and that's often called administration.
Can I
And
interrupt
so,
for a second?
what's that?
Can I interrupt for a moment? So there's the three things you just described, and when you said that, it popped something into my head from a little while ago. We talked about social media, and you made a commitment that you were going to go and make a post.
I did.
So tell us, did you keep that commitment?
Yes, I did.
How'd it go?
Uh, I think it went okay. I actually haven't really checked. The
Okay.
goal was to make the post, not anything beyond that.
So you made a commitment, you kept that commitment, and now you've moved into a new territory you were never in before, right?
Right now, the
And
next post is much easier.
to me, that's a classic example of how simple it is for a business owner to really make these steps wherever they're at today, to make those steps to grow the business in new ways as well. So anyway, I'll let you
Yeah,
go back to what you're sharing, but it just seemed like the classic, very small situation that illustrates just how easy it is for someone to change.
yeah. And so, thank you for that. That's so when we have these three things, one thing that happens is you just described with your story of this bookkeeper that was doing freelance. She starts trying to run an actual business, and she's been almost entirely focused, I imagine, on delivery. She probably got
Yeah.
She probably had repeat clients that she did work for, and she probably got new clients through word of mouth. And so she didn't have to learn about getting
Anything.
leads,
Yep.
sales, and none of it. Her service was what got her more customers, and she was trading her time for dollars. She wants to move beyond that so that she can trade her dollars for more time.
Yep. Which,
And
for anyone who's read Rich Dad Poor Dad, that is moving from the S quadrant of self-employed to the B quadrant of a business owner.
yeah, exactly. And beyond that, which we're not going to talk about today, but it would be trading your money for more money. And it's those people, when you see those are the people that make it look effortless. When you see somebody who's just succeeded, it's because they're not the bottleneck anymore. They're not integral to the success of their business. Their money is. And so whether they're asleep or not, the business continues to do its thing. But how do we get there? So with those three things, every small business owner, when you're bootstrapping, you really focus on you got to find a way to get customers, you got to have that revenue, and you got to be able to deliver. And the admin can either take a back seat, but often it becomes a huge distraction. All the little things that have to happen. And as soon as you get a handful of employees, that balloons even more with all the regulations and everything else that are involved in making sure that you're doing that right, not getting in trouble. And so admin ends up taking a huge portion of a business owner's mental bandwidth, their attention. And another thing that happens is I think most people are familiar with the term contractor hell, which is this idea that when the contractor doesn't have very much work, they go out and they find more jobs. And then they get busy doing the jobs and they quit finding more jobs. And so all of a sudden they realize they're coming to the end of their workload and they don't have anything else scheduled. And so then they have to go back to finding more jobs. And so they always constantly riding this roller coaster and they don't have the consistency. And it's not just contractors. This can happen in a number of businesses where you put your foot on the gas for marketing and sales, and as soon as you see some success, you take your foot off the throttle so that you can focus on the operations. And it's these cycles that people get stuck in, and because of these cycles, people think, well, I need to hire a marketing person, or I need to hire an operations person, or I need to put somebody in charge of sales. And sometimes that works, but there's a much safer and easier path to grow your business. And it's when you so part of it's creating systems, but ultimately it's about bringing in people, whether that's a tool, whether that's people or a tool, bringing something, whether it's people or a tool that can take things off your plate in the right order. And so when you think about it, um, if you're a business and you're making, we'll say $300,000 a year in revenue, and let's say you're the seller's discretionary earnings, what you get to actually pay yourself with, the money that's left over for the business owner, let's say that's $80,000 a year. And so if I pull out my little calculator here and we do some math, we say $80,000 a year divided by 2,000 hours a year. That's the equivalent of $40 an hour. And so, and we want to have some margin there. So maybe you divide that by 2, 3, 4, 5. But any activity that you do that is significantly less than that $40 an hour, you shouldn't do, because it's taking away from your ability to do the higher value activities. And if $40 an hour is your average, that very likely means that there's some activities you're doing that might be worth $80 to $100 an hour, and other activities you're doing that are worth nothing, or $5 or $10 an hour. And so as you get rid of those lower value activities, you can start doing more higher value activities because you're freeing up your time, and you can raise that rate, which means then you can hire another level, you can at a higher rate. And the levels that we go through in order to do this, our very first thing a business owner's got to do is get rid of the admin. because the admin is a necessary evil. It's not part of the value chain
So
of
I'm
making and
gonna
keeping
stop
commitments.
just for a second.
Yeah,
There's a few scenarios where I've seen that isn't 100% true, and I wanna call that out.
yeah.
Sometimes people in construction can do a job and it'll take them 20 hours, but if they bring a helper in for the actual physical labor, it can cut that job down to 5 hours, but that's a very niche scenario because having that second helper makes everything go way, way faster. So there are a few niche scenarios where I've seen that bringing in a helper, but I'm not talking full-time labor. I'm talking about you're bringing in somebody that can help on that job for that job. That can really
And they're
grow
essentially a
that
second
revenue.
set of hands for the owner.
Thank you. Yes, yes.
Yeah,
So
so they're not an independent employee. They're not somebody who has any direct ownership. They're an extra set of hands. They work directly, like as an extension of the owner. And so yes, there are those situations where that can really help. But even so,
and then can I interrupt one more time?
yeah,
Because I've run into so many people. In fact, just the other day, I had to explain this to someone. They're stuck in this zone where they're running so fast trying to generate new business that they're working nights, but they don't have enough revenue coming in to hire someone to do all the work that they think they need to offload to someone. And so if a person is in that situation where they're like, "I don't have enough revenue to bring on a second employee and even pay them 10, $12, whatever it is," what I recommend is find someone that's willing to work 3 hours a week, 4 hours a week, maybe 5 hours a week, because almost every small business owner can afford that little bit, and that's once again a very small baby step that helps get someone moving in the right direction. That way you don't have to try and run 26 hours a day until you have enough revenue coming in to fully support another person. And that's a huge, huge secret that so many people just don't realize is a possibility. So you can have them do just a sliver of the admin if that's all you can afford.
right. And I know so many entrepreneurs who share executive assistants between them. So there'll be one executive assistant that's working for three owners and handling all of the email and calendar for all three owners. And that is the main thing that you've got to get off your plate as an owner. You've got to get rid of your email. You've got to get rid of all those constant interruptions and distractions. And you've got to get out of your schedule. You've got to let somebody else to help you determine what the best use of your time is. And if you can get rid of those two things that we're going to call admin, and they can also begin to start helping with other things. But you can do that with a part-time VA or part-time executive assistant or a neighbor or whoever, and you can slowly work out of that. And again, you're only paying 10, $15 an hour for that work, which frees up hours that you can spend doing much higher dollar work. Which then this is why this method works better than just skipping straight to hiring somebody to do sales for you, is because now you have more resources to reinvest in the next level. And the next level is delivery, actually fulfilling on those commitments that you make. And that's where systems can really come in, and you can get yourself unstuck. And you've got to break that delivery down into what are the component pieces. So for example, if you run a if your business is a bakery and you love to bake, how can you break down the various different pieces of delivery? I mean, you've got to have ingredients that come in. So somebody's got to go shopping, depending on how or or manage deliveries. Um, Somebody's got to actually mix the cookies or the bread or whatever it is that you have, um, and all of these various things. And so you can break those down piece by piece and get other people to be involved in those.
And
And
it's
then
important we recognize right now, I think, anyone who's listening to this or watching us, what we just did is made it so you don't have to find another one of you. That's another common misconception as a business owner will say, I just need one more of me. And we just broke it down into a very easy to do system that means you don't have to find you. You have to find someone who's good at reading emails, someone who's good at creating appointments and scheduling, somebody who's good at, in this case, making cookies, somebody who's good at making bread. None of those have to be you as the business owner.
Right. Well, and even to start, I mean, just for me, when I started my first successful business, it was very simple for me to create even some templates using just Excel and spreadsheets that helped me to keep track of all the different things that needed to happen,
Mm.
and kept me on top of following up with the people I needed to follow up with in time that there were no fires, which then had the additional effect of cutting down, of giving me even more time because I didn't have to then fight fires because I was staying right on top of what needed to happen. And so my workload after my first year, figuring out, okay, what's all the stuff that has to happen, and I was busy all year long. I went to where I had things figured out to where I had the admin handled by someone else. I had delivery handled by someone else, and I was only responsible for the marketing and the sales. And I had good handoffs from when I did sales and marketing with simple systems that I built using basically spreadsheets and paper to hand off to the other people that needed to do their work.
So
And
no fancy technology needed. When
none.
people
And
think systems, they think technology. And you're saying Excel was the fanciest you had and paper, and it worked really well.
it worked. And at small levels it does. And
Mhm.
eventually got to the size where it's like, oh, now I need a CRM. Using an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of the contact that I had with customers and what was said on each call, and when I needed to call them back, and all the various things. It got to the point to where it's like, oh, a $10 a month software is going to save me hours of manual data entry. Okay, so I got a $10 a month application that I could put all my customers in, and it would help me schedule when I needed to call them back. So all I had to do was open up the software every day and either add new customers in and look at my list of who I needed to contact, and that saved even more hours. And so whether it's people or tools, you got to start at the right level. So the very first thing is admin, then delivery, then marketing, bringing more people in so you can get that consistency of revenue, and then sales, and then leadership is the final step that you can hand off. And that's when you're able to go from feeling stuck and feeling stalled, feeling friction, to having freedom and eventually flow and the choice to do what you want to do, whether that's to stay in the business as a leader, to go start another business, or to spend your time on vacation while your business continues to grow without you. But it all comes down to that basic principle of you've got to replace yourself. The best CEOs are replacing themselves in their business every 6 months. They're not doing the same jobs today that they were doing 6 months ago. They've replaced themselves. They've moved on to something bigger and better that they find more fulfilling and brings more value to the business. They don't hold on to the 10, 20, $30 an hour tasks, even if they're tasks that they enjoy or tasks that they're good at. They focus on what are the tasks that they can do that nobody else can, that are the highest value tasks. And then when they figure out what that is, they come back and they figure out, how do I replace myself so that somebody else can do this task and I can move on to doing an even higher value task. And so fundamentally, there's got to be a prerequisite to being able to do this. And it's something that so many entrepreneurs are very hesitant to even do. And I know this because sometimes I just don't want to know the answer. And it's a simple time audit. Keeping track of what you do on a day-to-day basis in 15-minute increments, which again can be done with a spreadsheet, or you can print out a piece of paper and write things down. But if you do that for a week, everything that you do from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, what did you do in this time? You just from that exercise alone, you will find dozens of things that you're engaged in that don't give you energy and don't provide value to your business or your life. And just cutting those out will free up more time. Then, if you take that a step further and actually organize those activities into quadrants, what are you good at and what's valuable to the business? That's your primary quadrant where you really want to stay. What's really valuable to the business that you don't like doing? Well, that's a quadrant for replacement. What are you what are you not so good at that's valuable to the business? You need to delegate those things as quickly as you can. And what's not valuable to business that you don't like to do? Well, you can just stop doing those things. And so when you've done that, you know how you're spending your time, then you can start to see, okay, well, looking at the of order for freedom, I've got to get rid of my admin first, then delivery, then marketing, then I can get rid of sales, and finally leadership. And the whole time you're doing this, you're bringing people and tools on, and you're building out a leadership team that's responsible for these things. So then you can have a director of customer success or an operations manager. You can have a director of marketing. You can have a director of sales. Piece by piece, you're plugging these things into your business as you increase the value that you're bringing to the business at the same time, so that you've got the resources to actually, well, can I afford to hire this person? Well, absolutely you can, because you know that when you get rid of that $20 an hour activity that you spend 10 hours a week doing, and you pay somebody else for it, then you have more time to go and do the 80 or $100 an activity that will more than fund that person's salary. And
It's a
and
pretty amazing
so
formula when you get down to it.
yeah, and it's but the thing is, you've also got to realize that it takes time to not skip a step
Mhm.
and just go piece by piece. So if you're feeling stuck, which we know, which I know from a fact, many small business owners are, because I'm friends with many. The very first thing you got to do is a time audit. Categorize it. Then get rid of your admin. Then figure out what parts of delivery you can get rid of until you get rid of all of delivery. And I know that I found when I was out of delivery, it was so freeing. Even though I was still
Mhm.
responsible for bringing in the revenue, not having to be responsible for fulfillment and knowing that that was handled well in 90% of cases, not all cases. There were a few fires that I occasionally had to come back in and help solve. But, even 80% done by somebody else is awesome. And so if I know that the majority of my delivery is being handled and my customers are happy, that frees up so much more effort and energy. Because again, ultimately, one of the main things that I'm trying to share here is that most small business owners are doing too much. At the end of the day, you need to do less, more of the right things. And that's what will get you out of being stuck, out of feeling like your business is a cage or a pair of golden handcuffs that you've created for yourself, to where you actually have wings of freedom, where you can go and do the things that you want to do, things that you enjoy, whether that's in your business or out of it. And at the end of the day, when you get to that point, you don't really see a difference. It's just life. And you stop worrying about this work life balance that so many people talk about, and it's just life. And the things that you love and enjoy, and you're able to spend time with the people that you really care about and do the things that you really enjoy, whatever that happens to be, if you're willing to follow this process step by step and keep the commitments you make with yourself. So your homework is, start with a time audit. How are you spending your time on a day-to-day basis? In 15-minute increments is what I found that works the best.
Perfect. So is that the only homework you have for everybody?
Well, it's that what you talked about at the beginning. If you just take that first step and actually commit to it and follow through,
Mhm.
then it makes the next step that much easier.
Yep, perfect. So today, the only homework is do a time audit.
Do a time audit for all of next week.
There we
How are you
go.
spending your time?
And that takes us right to the end of our time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.